Welcome to X Confessions Unlocked, where lies, betrayal, and truth collide. Kindly subscribe so you don't miss any of this. We share new stories daily. Stick around and unlock the drama. Now, let's get into today's story. She kissed him on the cheek, laughing, right in front of her daughter and right in front of me. She thought I didn't know. Thought I wouldn't notice the way her body leaned into his, the way her eyes sparkled like they used to when we first fell in love. She thought I was just the ex. The ex who'd show up, bring the cake, smile for the camera, and leave quietly while her secret life bloomed in full view. But I wasn't stupid. I wasn't blind. I saw everything. I just chose to wait. My name is Jonah. I'm 39 years old. I used to think that being a good husband meant staying quiet during the rough patches, carrying the weight so she wouldn't have to, and forgiving without making her beg for it. Paula was the love of my life, or so I believed for almost a decade. We met when we were both broke and hungry for something bigger. She worked at a gallery part-time. I was grinding as a freelance graphic designer. Our early days were full of ramen noodles and all-night conversations on the fire escape of our studio apartment. We got married 6 years ago, and 3 years ago we had our daughter, Ella. If there's one thing I'll never regret in this story, it's being Ella's father. She's everything to me. But Paula changed. Or maybe I just started noticing what I didn't want to admit before. It began after she went back to work full-time. A new position at some boutique marketing agency, modern, flashy, full of 20-something hotshots with sleek jawlines and over-polished LinkedIn profiles. She started coming home later, said it was campaign season, or that her team was behind on a pitch. I believed her. At first. Then she stopped checking in altogether. Stopped asking about my work. Forgot little things. She used to ask to see the logos I designed, critique them playfully. That stopped. Her eyes glazed over whenever I talked. One night, I found a hotel key in her coat pocket. She said it was a mistake. Claimed she was picking something up for her boss. I wanted to believe her, so I did. But the truth always leaks. It seeped into her eyes, into her silences. It was in how she locked her phone when she used to leave it face up on the counter. It was in how she didn't want to be touched anymore. Still, I said nothing. I'd always been the calm one. The "you're too nice" guy. She used to love that about me. Later, she mocked it. Called me too soft, said I didn't know how to take control. 3 months before Ella's birthday, I started doing my own digging. Not obsessively, just carefully, quietly. A few late nights after Ella had gone to bed, I checked through our shared iCloud account. She didn't realize her messages were still syncing to the old iPad I used to use for work. That was when I saw the name Daniel. And the messages, flirty, intimate, familiar. They joked about me. I'll never forget that. One message from her said, "He's so clueless, he brought me flowers last night, and I was literally still sore from you." Followed by laughing emojis. I sat there on the couch, iPad in hand, heart pounding so hard I thought it might stop. I didn't cry. Not then. Just sat in silence for a long time. You don't always get dramatic breakdowns. Sometimes betrayal just makes everything still. Cold. That night, I stared at the ceiling and listened to her breathe beside me, pretending she loved me, pretending nothing had changed. I could have confronted her then, screamed, packed a bag, called my brother, and raged about it all. But I didn't. I waited, because Ella's 4th birthday was coming up, and Paula, ever the image-obsessed perfectionist, was throwing a big celebration at a rented venue, a pretty little garden space near the lake with fairy lights and kids entertainers. She sent me the invite like I was just another parent on a roster, and I saw the guest list. There he was, Daniel, the friend from work. She actually invited him. Maybe she wanted to rub it in. Maybe she thought I'd be too spineless to say anything. I didn't react. I just said, "Cool. Let me know what kind of cake Ella wants." 3 weeks before the party, I met with a lawyer. We drew up papers for joint custody, papers that favored me. I've been the primary caregiver while Paula focused on work. I documented everything. Every night, I took Ella to the doctor while Paula claimed she was tied up with meetings. Every preschool pickup. Every day, she didn't show up for parent-teacher conferences. I didn't want to take Ella away from her mother, but I needed to protect myself and our daughter. The party day came. I wore my best button down, showed up 15 minutes early with the cake, a giant unicorn one that Ella had picked out with me at the bakery. She ran into my arms, squealing, "Daddy," and my heart melted. Paula arrived half an hour later with Daniel. He was tall, handsome in a smug, Instagram influencer kind of way. Wore a blazer and no socks with his loafers. The kind of guy who thinks a half smirk counts as a personality. She introduced him to everyone as a close family friend, right? He tried to shake my hand. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "You don't have to pretend for me." He blinked. Paula laughed awkwardly and pulled him away to the drinks table. I mingled, took photos, watched Ella laugh with her friends. I noticed the glances Paula threw my way, testing, curious, maybe even nervous. I stayed calm. Not cold, not passive-aggressive, just centered. And right before the cake cutting, I asked Paula to step aside. Just a minute, I said. We stood near the hedge, just out of earshot. I pulled out a small envelope. What's this? She asked. Custody documents, I said. You can read them later. But I'm filing next week. Her face paled. Wait, what? Are you seriously doing this here? I'm not making a scene. I'm making a point. You thought I didn't know. I did. I just chose to act when it mattered. She looked like she wanted to cry. Or scream. Maybe both. Jonah, come on, we can talk. I'm not stopping you from seeing Ella. I'd never do that. But I'm not going to let her grow up thinking this. I waved toward Daniel. Is normal. That sneaking and lies are part of love. She stared at me like she'd never seen me before. Like the guy who used to rub her feet after a 12-hour shift was suddenly someone she couldn't predict. I walked away before she could respond. Ella blew out her candles. The kids clapped. I took a photo just of her, just of that moment. And I left right after the presents were opened. That night, Paula texted me. A long, rambling message about how things got complicated and how she never meant to hurt anyone. Said she wanted to explain herself, that maybe we rushed into things and could clear the air. I didn't reply. I didn't need to anymore. I didn't reply to her text that night. Not out of pride, just peace. I had said what needed to be said. There was nothing left in me that needed her explanation. No part of me still craved her version of the story. I had lived it. That was enough. The following days were quieter than I expected. No dramatic confrontations. No sudden storm at my doorstep. Just silence. I picked Ella up from preschool on Monday, and Paula didn't say a word about the papers or the party. Maybe she was still processing. Maybe she didn't know how to respond to a version of me she hadn't seen in years. Calm, decisive, grounded. The truth is, I wasn't always like this. After I first discovered her affair, I spiraled. Quietly. While she slept in our bed beside me, I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I had missed. I looked back on our marriage like it was some unsolvable puzzle. I kept asking myself, was I boring? Was I not enough? Was I too kind? Too passive? There's this thing that happens when someone betrays you, but still pretends everything is fine. You start doubting your own senses. You start wondering if maybe you are the one overreacting, making things up. Gaslighting doesn't always come in loud declarations. It often comes in the form of carefully timed affection, delayed responses, or the absence of any apology at all. It broke something in me. For a while, I lost 2 clients in the weeks after I found out. I couldn't focus. My work became mechanical. I'd sit at my desk, staring at blank Illustrator canvases, hating every pixel. I started avoiding calls from my friends. I didn't want to hear them say, man, you've got to confront her. I wasn't ready, but Ella kept me anchored. Every morning, when she came into the kitchen in her tiny pajamas and asked for banana pancakes, I found my rhythm again. I started waking up earlier, cooking breakfast for both of us, taking longer walks, fixing up the spare room in case I ever needed it. And then I started building something. I had this idea for a brand design toolkit, customizable logo templates for small businesses that couldn't afford high-end design services. I've been tinkering with the idea for years, but never had the time. Suddenly, all I had was time and clarity. I threw myself into it, not with the rage of a man wronged, but with the focus of someone trying to reclaim himself. It took 4 months. During the nights Paula was working late, I was building my own project, setting up the website, recording tutorials, creating mock-ups. By the time Ella's birthday came around, I'd already made 3 sales. Small ones, but real. The week after the party, a business coach found my product through a Facebook group and shared it with his following. Sales tripled overnight. Then I got featured in a small business newsletter. And just like that, something I built in heartbreak became something that made me money while I slept. Funny how healing looks nothing like revenge, but it still feels just as powerful. 2 weeks after I handed Paula the custody papers, she called. I let go to voicemail. Then came the email. The subject line was just, "Can we talk?" For real. She didn't sound angry. She sounded small, like someone who finally realized she'd bet on the wrong version of the story. Jonah, it read, I deserve a lot of what you said. I know you're angry. I know I betrayed your trust in ways I can't fix. But I need you to understand, it wasn't about him. It wasn't even really about you. I felt lost. I felt like I didn't know who I was anymore, and I panicked. You were always so steady, and I resented you for it. Isn't that crazy? I resented you for being the one thing that didn't fall apart. That's on me. And I'm sorry. She asked to meet. Said she wasn't asking for a second chance, just a real conversation. So I agreed. We met at a cafe we used to love back when we were still in our us against the world phase. She looked nervous. No makeup. Hoodie. Hair tied back. She looked like someone trying to shed an identity that didn't fit anymore. She started talking before I even sat down. I know it's too late to fix anything. I just didn't want to go on pretending like none of it mattered. I nodded. Good. Because it did matter. There was a long pause. She looked down at her hands. I didn't think you'd react like this, she said quietly. Like what? Like someone who doesn't need me anymore. That stung a little. Because once I really did. Not for validation, but because I built my life around her. Around us. I thought marriage was about carrying each other through the worst. But she left when I needed her most. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. She left while still sharing my bed. I stopped needing someone who couldn't stand beside me when it counted, I said. Not cruelly, just honestly. She swallowed hard. You were always better than me. No, I said. Just different. I believed in us longer than you did. That's all. We talked for maybe an hour. She asked about Ella. About my business. I told her it was doing well. She smiled faintly. I think, for the first time, she realized she underestimated me. Not just as a partner, but as a man. Before we parted, she said something I'll never forget. I used to think you were safe because you'd never leave. That no matter what I did, you'd still be there. I think I was afraid of how solid you were, and how flimsy that made me feel by comparison. It wasn't an excuse, but it was a window into her mind. A deeply flawed, deeply human mind. I don't think she meant to be cruel. Just selfish, caught in her own spiral. She didn't cheat out of malice. She cheated because she lost her own identity and thought excitement would fix it. But she broke something instead. After that meeting, things between us became more civil. We worked out a temporary custody arrangement while the courts processed the paperwork. I kept things professional. She occasionally tried to steer the conversation toward personal memories, soft remembrances. I didn't engage. Ella adjusted better than I expected. She's a smart kid. Kids feel everything. But I made sure her world stayed consistent. No sudden removals. No bashing her mom. I just kept showing up for her. Every bedtime. Every boo-boo. Every storybook she wanted read for the 10th time in a row. A month later, I was invited to speak on a podcast for creative freelancers. 2 weeks after that, a larger design platform reached out asking to partner with my toolkit. I said yes. Then came a workshop gig at a small conference. Then a feature in a digital magazine. I didn't go viral. I didn't explode. I built, brick by brick. That's the part people miss when they want the win. It wasn't loud. It wasn't shiny. It was quiet and disciplined and rooted in pain I refused to let rot inside me. And slowly, something shifted. Paula started sending me supportive texts. Little things like saw your podcast, proud of you, or Ella show me your new site. It's really good. I appreciated it. I didn't need it. That was the difference. Then one night, about 5 months after Ella's birthday, I got a message that simply said, "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd been different." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't respond, because it didn't matter anymore. She had her path. I had mine. Mine just didn't include her anymore. The last time Paula came to my apartment, it wasn't to argue. It wasn't to plead or explain. It was to drop off Ella's art supply she had forgotten during the last visit. Paula stood in the doorway like she was unsure if she belonged there anymore. And the truth was, she didn't. Not because I hated her. I didn't. I couldn't. Hate takes energy, and I had redirected every ounce of mine into building something better for me and for Ella. But Paula was no longer part of that picture. Not really. She had become someone I knew from a former chapter. A character who had once been central, but who now appeared in fewer and fewer scenes. She glanced around my place, now clean and minimal, decorated with pieces of Ella's finger paintings taped proudly to the fridge. I had moved things around since the separation. New couch, different curtains, brighter light bulbs, not just to redecorate, but to reclaim the space. "You've made it feel like home," she said softly. "It is home," I replied, offering a small smile. There was a pause. "Ella loves it here," she added, eyes lingering on the little reading corner I'd made with pillows and fairy lights. I nodded. "She's happy. That's what matters." She didn't bring up Daniel. Not once. I don't know if they were still together. Maybe they fizzled out the way affairs often do once the adrenaline is gone. Maybe she realized he was never meant for anything long-term. I didn't ask. I didn't care. She lingered longer than she needed to, like there was more she wanted to say. I didn't press. After she left, I stood by the window and watched her walk away. There was a strange kind of closure in it, not dramatic or profound, just quiet, like the final page of a book you didn't want to reread. The custody arrangement finalized shortly after. The court granted us joint custody, but leaned in my favor regarding time and decision-making, especially school and medical. Paula didn't contest it. I think she knew. Ella settled into the routine beautifully. 2 homes, 1 steady heartbeat. Love. That's all kids need. I never spoke ill of Paula around her. Not even when I wanted to. Not even when Ella once asked, "Why did Mommy sleep at Daniel's house when you were still married?" I took a deep breath that day, held back the anger, and said, "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. But we're both here for you, no matter what. Because at the end of all this, I had one job, to be the dad I promised I'd be." Work continued to grow. The toolkit expanded into 3 different products. I hired a part-time assistant. I started mentoring younger designers who reminded me of my past self. The guy eating ramen at midnight, praying his invoice would clear in time to pay rent. The podcast I was on got syndicated to a bigger network. I was invited to speak at a design summit. That was the first time someone introduced me as an authority in my field. I had a blink-back emotion when I heard it. I wasn't chasing revenge. I was chasing wholeness. And I caught it. Then, out of nowhere, Paula showed up at the summit. It was in our city, so it wasn't far-fetched. But I wasn't expecting her. She stood at the back of the room while I answered questions from the crowd. I only noticed her as I was walking off stage. She didn't wave. Just smiled, tight-lipped, polite, a little sad. Later, I found a note tucked into the copy of my toolkit someone had brought for me to sign. It was in her handwriting. "I see you now. I'm sorry it took losing you to understand who you really were. I wish I'd respected your quiet strength back, then instead of mistaking it for weakness. You were never weak. You were the strongest one of all." I sat with that for a while. Not because I needed the validation, but because it finally proved something I always suspected. She didn't leave because I wasn't enough. She left because she couldn't see what enough even looked like. When someone doesn't know their own worth, they can't possibly recognize yours. That was the last time I saw her in person. We still co-parent. Text about Ella. Exchange drop-off notes. But there's no warmth beyond what's necessary. No longing. No nostalgia. She still tries sometimes, casually suggesting coffee while we wait for Ella during ballet class. Or sending me articles she thinks I'd enjoy. But I keep my responses light, kind, and firm. I don't leave doors open I have no intention of walking through. And she knows. She knows the version of me who once stood beside her at the altar is long gone. That man doesn't exist anymore. He grew into someone she didn't expect and couldn't keep. I think she regrets it. Not losing me, but losing who she could have been if she hadn't chosen comfort over commitment, distraction over depth. Ella's 5th birthday came this year. She won a camping trip with just me and a few of her little friends. Paula offered to join, but Ella politely said she wanted it just with Daddy this time. There was no malice in it, just a child's instinct for where the safety is. I took a photo of Ella by the lake that morning, her hair wild from sleep, grinning wide with marshmallow sticky cheeks. I framed it and put it on my desk. Sometimes I catch myself looking at it when I'm stuck on a design or feeling overwhelmed. That photo reminds me why I kept going. Why I didn't burn it all down when I could have. Why I didn't let heartbreak make me hard. My life didn't fall apart. It rearranged itself around what really mattered. I was once dismissed as too quiet, too soft, too safe. Now I know my power isn't in how loudly I fight, but in how consistently I show up, in how I build, in how I let go, even when it hurts, and in how I keep choosing peace every single day. So no, Paula didn't ruin me. She revealed me, and I'll always thank her for that, quietly, without words. Because the best part of healing, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You just live, and that's enough.